Welcome to Ancient Life Hacks. I am Jared Madsen. I have a master's degree in Chinese medicine. I lived in China for many years. I am fluent in Chinese. I'm also interested in many ancient cultures of the world. And what interests me most about these ancient cultures, Chinese in particular, is its ability to take its wisdom and use those in practical applications. So Chinese medicine, which is what I studied, is actually a very ancient medicine. The whole way of thinking about the world, thinking about the body is quite different than modern day medicine. So today we are going to look at the keto diet from a Chinese medicine point of view, and not just Chinese medicine point of view. We're going to dive into how Taoism would look at the keto diet, some of these ancient ways of thinking. So today we will analyze keto from some of these different old ways of thinking, and there are many nuances. So it's hard to say, is keto good? Is keto bad? We're going to look at these nuances, and at the end, I think you can decide for yourself, is keto something that you want to do? Do you want to incorporate parts of it into your life? How do you want to use keto if you choose to use it? All right, so first things first, what is the keto diet? Well, according to the internet, 70 to 80% of your calories come from fats, 20 to 25% come from protein, and only 5 to 10% come from carbohydrates. So basically, the idea behind keto, if I am understanding this correctly, and I believe that I am, is that you don't want your body to produce glucose. Carbohydrates make glucose. They make it very easy, and that's what fuels, that is one fuel. And as what your body generally likes the most, it likes to use glucose to fuel your body, to fuel everything. But your body can also use fat. Now, we talked about fasting in a previous episode, and keto goes a little bit on the same line of thinking of that. It is not fasting. You can incorporate fasting with keto if you want, but the idea of fasting is that you are making your body use your own fat, the fat in your body, to burn as fuel, whereas keto is using the fat from food and basically not allowing your body to have glucose. Now, one reason that the protein isn't super high, that fat is super high, is that your body can take protein and convert that into glucose. It's not as easy as from carbs, but it can do that. But you also need protein. So whoever came up with keto figured out this calculation of a majority of your calories are coming from fats, some are coming from protein, and then as little carbs as possible to put yourself into a state of ketosis, which is basically, without going into all of the science, it's basically burning fat as fuel. It's using it for all aspects of the body, not just for your muscles, but also organs. And in the brain, ketosis is able to use fat for all of that. So that's the idea behind keto. A lot of fat, have your body run on fat. And then I suppose the idea would be when you're not eating, your body is used to running on fat. So it's a very easy transition to your body using the fat of your body as fuel, right? You're using fat when you eat, and then when you're not when your stomach is empty, when you've used all your calories, naturally your body's already using fat as fuel, the fat from your foods, and so now it will use the fat from your body, okay? That's keto in a nutshell. The main thing I want to get into is how Chinese medicine looks at keto, some of the various aspects. Keto kind of puts your body into a crisis mode, if you think about it, right? The same with fasting. People might claim it isn't, but it is. You know, if you're not eating, it forces your body to use the fat of your body, that is a type of a crisis mode, right? You don't have a surplus of food. You have to tap into your reserves. And so keto is a little bit of the same idea. So we kind of want to keep that in mind. Do we want our body in a crisis mode all the time? Is that good for us? Maybe it is, maybe it isn't, right? We would naturally, you'd probably say, no, that's probably not. But, you know, there have been weirder things out there in the universe. So maybe there's something to it. Now, the Taoists say some Taoist practices are big into fasting. They do a lot of fasting, and then they have these very strong herbal formulas that they take, sometimes with heavy metals. So basically poisons. They have these poisons that they take, and through this process, this is kind of the initial process down their spiritual journey. The idea is that it helps open up the body. It unreleases supernormal abilities. It helps them take this physical body and create a more divine body, a body that might be immortal. That's kind of the idea. Now, again, I'm super summarizing because there are a ton of Taoist practices, and not all of them do this, but a lot of them do. Now, oftentimes, Taoist practices are one master, one student, or maybe a couple students. So you have one master keeping a close eye all the time on their students. So true Taoism, these Taoist practices are not really appropriate for the masses. It's definitely not appropriate to be starving yourself and then taking a bunch of poison. That's a horrible idea. But in this very specific, with all these things combined the right way, maybe there's something to it. Maybe there isn't, but that is the idea. So from their point of view, I have seen things and I've heard of texts that talk about something along the lines of these old Taoist texts. Some, now remember, there are a lot of different Taoist practices, but some would say things like, never let a grain of rice pass your lips. So basically they're saying, hey, we do keto. We don't eat grains. We don't eat carbs. We only eat maybe meats and vegetables. Certain Taoist practices might do that. But again, those things are kind of intense, right? We just talked about crisis mode. You're kind of putting yourself into a really intense state. So generally, these are not things that are open to the public. You got to go to some mountain somewhere and beg a master for years before they will accept you and teach you some of this stuff. So yeah, it exists. Probably not the best thing to base our health on for the rest of the world. For those of us who are just trying to live happier, healthier lives, we want to take that with a grain of salt. So the next thing here is we want to look into Chinese medicine. And what how Chinese medicine looks at fasting. So if you don't know Chinese medicine, that's fine. It's a whole medical system. It can be complicated, but we'll go through a few key points of how Chinese medicine would look at fasting. Now, brief history of Chinese medicine. Chinese medicine is very, very old. It's been around for thousands of years. One interesting thing is thousands of years ago, with the Yellow Emperor's Internal Classic, which is considered the first book of Chinese medicine, it was already a very complete medicine. And many of the medical books that came after that were just kind of taking a lot of these theories and expounding on them, which leaves some to believe. Some people think that maybe Chinese medicine came from a culture before our current culture, some prehistoric type culture. Right? Because this book that comes out of nowhere that some people say this guy wrote it, some people say that guy wrote it. It's not very clear. It's kind of this comprehensive, complete medicine thousands of years ago that kind of came out of nowhere. And then all of Chinese medicine is pretty much based on that. And then aspects of various Taoist practices and different ideas are incorporated into it. So maybe Chinese medicine is a lot older than we think, right? So it's worth thinking about Chinese medicine. It's not just needles and herbs. All right. So we have 7 things here. 7 things that compare Chinese medicine and keto. Imbalance in the body's energy. Okay, so Chinese medicine is all about qi. Qi is, we could do a whole episode on qi. There's all types of qi. It's this energy in the body that you can't really see. You can't see. But it's kind of operating at a deeper level. Now, the problem with using a high-fat diet and low carb is that it is very clumpy, right? It is very dense. Qi, on the other hand, is very light. And therefore, it could cause the qi of your body, the energy of your body, to stagnate. And if it stagnates, it can produce heat. Okay, so we do want warmth in the body, but we do not want heat produced from stagnation. So I heard a phrase the other day, overnutrition, right? Like having too many nutrients. That's almost what we're talking about here, because fats are very dense. They're very heavy. If you're eating a lot of fats, it's going to cause stagnation, which can cause heat. This can cause a variety of digestive issues, irritability, and skin problems, and many other things. It can create heat, and then the heat can transfer to various parts of the body. So that's one thing to take into consideration is we don't want stagnation. Stagnation, bad. We want nice, free flow of qi. All right, the next thing, cold nature of high-fat foods. So Chinese medicine is big into not just energies, but also the temperatures. And we talk about the temperatures of food. So it's not just, is this food warm or is this food cold? It's more the nature of the food itself. Now, in Chinese medicine, fats, particularly saturated fats, are considered to be cold. So again, the body wants to be warm, but we're eating something that is very cold, and it makes our body more cold. So that is not good. We don't want our body to be too cold. Now, I suppose in theory, if you were if you run hot as it is, and there are different types of heat in Chinese medicine. We don't want to go too deep into this stuff, but there is true heat and false heat. False heat comes from deficiency. True heat comes from excess. So in theory, if you have true heat, having a little bit of cooling foods in your diet would be a good idea. So maybe some extra fat wouldn't be that bad, but that is not most people, and that is not a balanced person. And if they have a lot of excess heat, eating a bunch of fat is not going to help that probably at all. So that's a whole different issue. So the consumption of these fats could, again, weaken the digestion, make the digestion cold. You can kind of think of your digestion. Your stomach is a pot on a stove, and the spleen and pancreas are the fire, and they are cooking the foods. And when you dump a bunch of fat in that's kind of cold, it's like dumping a bunch of ice water or something like that in a soup. It's going to really tax the energies of the spleen and pancreas in particular, and also can injure the stomach, can injure all of your digestion. So eating a lot of fat from that point of view, not a good idea. Okay, number 3, it lacks variety. Okay, the keto diet kind of just eating sticks of butter and bacon all day. Not a huge amount of variety. Now, in modern medicine, we may say, hey, as long as you take a vitamin and you'll get your nutrients, that's fine. Chinese medicine doesn't quite look at it that way. Chinese medicine looks at you want to eat as wide a variety of foods as you can, because foods have all different energies, right? Even foods that are similar, the energies are a little bit different. And there's so many nuances to these things. The easiest thing is just eat a wide variety, and then you will get all different types of nutrients. On a side note, this is why Chinese people love to have these big banquets, because when they eat, it is family style. And generally speaking, you order a dish or two per person. So if you have 10 people, you're going to have 15, maybe 20 dishes even at a big table, and everybody gets some of that. So from that point of view, you're getting all different types of meats, all different types of vegetables, seafoods, everything like that. You're getting a wide, we would talk about nutrients. In ancient China, they didn't talk about nutrients. They talked about different energies. A wide variety of energies. You got hot foods and cool foods and foods with different flavors and all these different things. So then you don't really have to worry about, okay, I'm only eating this one food. Am I getting this stuff as well? So generally that's the goal, is to try to eat as many foods as you can. Whereas the keto diet greatly restricts the variety of foods that you can eat. Number 4, stress on the liver and gallbladder. And this wouldn't even necessarily, it is in Chinese medicine, but it's not necessarily Chinese medicine. We know that the gallbladder has to deal with fats during digestion, and liver deals with toxins and things like that. And so, by eating so many fats, it's going to put a great burden on the liver and the gallbladder. This is, here it says that this can cause irritability, headaches, and digestive problems. So we're kind of going back over to the same things again. We're getting many of the same symptoms, different things causing it. And then sometimes you will hear people talk about a keto headache. I think that usually happens at the beginning. And then your body, that's the other thing. Your body is an amazing thing and can adapt. It can adapt to almost anything and stay alive. So there's staying alive, and then there's living well. And I think generally we want to try and live well, but can you stay alive? You can stay alive on a lot of different diets. I mean, some people stay alive on junk food diets. I don't know how, but they do. They just keep going. It's quite amazing. The human body is amazing. Number 5, dehydration and kidney health. So here's another problem, is that it can lead to increased fluid loss and potentially deplete the body's yin and kidney essence, according to Chinese medicine. That is true. So some of the symptoms will be dry mouth, increased thirst, and possibly kidney issues. Kidneys are very, very important. All the organs are important. In Chinese medicine, kidneys are especially important. Kidneys are kind of this they have the fundamental essence and energy of the body. If you injure your kidneys, if you deplete their energies, now we're not talking about diseases in the sense that we usually talk, we're talking about the energies. If you deplete the kidney energy of your body, that is going to negatively affect many aspects of your body, because a lot of the fundamental energies of the other organs come from the kidney. So eating a bunch of fat will strain the kidneys, and the dehydration, they're going to have to pull water from other sources that they don't need. So that means that if you're on the keto diet, you're going to need to drink a lot more water, but that still doesn't quite solve the problem. That just solves one problem, which is the water source. It doesn't solve the problem of taxing the kidney energy, right? So short term, yeah, maybe, but long term, do we really want to be taxing the fundamental energies of the human body by eating a bunch of fat? I don't. I will pass. Thank you very much. All right. This one here is not so much Chinese medicine, but we have it. It can impact the blood sugar. So it stabilizes blood sugar levels, but that may not be suitable for every person. Okay, so again, that would be a question for your doctor. But in Chinese medicine, sweet foods, sweet is the energy of the spleen stomach. So sweet is the energy of the organs that control digestion. Now, by removing all carbs, you're basically removing all sweetness from your diet. Okay, so there are the 5 elements, right? We won't dive super deep into the 5 elements now, but one of the 5 elements connects with sweetness. So all the 5 elements connect with a different flavor, and earth in particular connects with sweetness. The spleen and stomach are considered the earth organs. They are the sweet organs. So what that means is things that are sweet can nourish and tonify the spleen stomach. But an excess of sweetness will definitely injure the spleen stomach. That's the key. Drinking a bunch of soda is a major excess of sweetness. It will just overload the spleen stomach and definitely hurt the spleen stomach very, very much. But incorporating things like yams, right? Yams are kind of sweet. They're orange. They are very good at strengthening the spleen stomach. They're a little sweet. They're not too sweet. And then, it's a whole food. So it's connected with the fiber so it doesn't overload the system all of a sudden. Things like that are very good at strengthening the digestion. Rice is kind of a bland, slightly sweet grain. Rice is very good at balancing out the spleen stomach. By removing rice, removing yams, removing things like that are slightly sweet that can help nourish the stomach, you are not providing the spleen stomach with the nourishment that it needs. And after a period of time, no good. All right, so for Chinese medicine, that is mostly what it talks about. Now, here's some ideas that I have for keto. Keto is kind of like fasting. So then my question would be, well, why don't you just fast instead? So for instance, you could have a nice breakfast and lunch with all different kinds of foods, some grains, but also meats and fats and vegetables and everything. And then you could skip dinner, right? Oh, there you go. Now, will that put your body into a state of ketosis by morning? Maybe, maybe not. I have seen reports that say, especially if you're intermittent fasting, you are skipping dinner, you are much more likely to produce ketones in a shorter amount of time. But another option would be, you skip a whole day of eating, or you just start to incorporate fasting. And then when you enter ketosis, it will not be using the fats of foods, it will be using the fats of your body, which is much more suitable direct source of energy if you want fat as energy, right? Because it has already been food that's been processed and stored in your body, as opposed to fats from foods. The body still needs to kind of process that some. So I would probably say you can watch the other episode I did on fasting. If you're looking at keto, maybe look into fasting as well. And instead of going full no carb, you could actually do a low carb. And so this is another thing that I wanted to briefly talk about. Carbohydrates, right? Glucose, right? This isn't Chinese medicine, but this is more for stronger, more powerful, it gives you boosts of energy, whereas as fats give you a little bit more consistent energy. So one thing you can do is if you are not very physically active, would be to just reduce your carbohydrate intake, because carbs are used, right? They make glucose. We talked about that. And that can give you boosts of energy. So that can be good for a lot of physical things, especially strong boosts of energy. Whereas fats are a little bit more consistent energy. So one could make the argument that, hey, I'm a smart person. I think more. I don't use my physical body as much. I'm going to go on a low carb diet so that I can have more consistent thinking energy. You might have an argument for that. Now, I know a lot of smart people who eat a bunch of rice as well. So one could make the other argument that, you want to know what? The brain likes glucose the most. They like carbs the most. So if you want to be smart, you need to have a good digestion where you eat a lot of carbs, and then that will give your brain superpower to think and to process thoughts and ideas. This sounds like a topic for another discussion, right? So we could maybe do a little something on that one day. And then the last thing, and this isn't really keto, but this is just, we touched upon varieties of foods in Chinese medicine. What that does not include, okay? Generally speaking, in Chinese medicine, a lot of Chinese, there is no good or bad. There's just this and it does that, or this and it affects the body that way. But highly processed food, we can say, is kind of always bad. Not always, but generally always bad. It has stripped the food of many different nutrients, energies, and it has condensed it down to one thing. For instance, refined sugar, right? It has stripped it of the fiber and all the other good stuff, and it has basically made it just into this glucose that enters the body and enters right into the bloodstream. Now, one could make the argument, well, if I need a boost of energy, all of a sudden, if I'm going to run a sprint, all of a sudden, should I eat a candy bar? One could make the argument for that, I suppose. You would get more of a boost of energy if you eat a candy bar, immediate energy, than if you ate some fruit. Now, long term, no good. But if a tiger is chasing you, I guess, and you have a Snickers bar or something, and you take a bite, it might not be a bad idea, right? Get away from that tiger and then worry about it later. But we're more talking about the frequent use of highly refined foods. They are kind of not even really foods anymore because all the good stuff has been stripped away. So when we talk about eating a wide variety of food, it doesn't really include junk food and stuff like that. Okay, that is my general take on keto. We dived into some aspects of Chinese medicine. There's a ton more that we could talk about, but we will leave it at that today. If you have any questions or anything you want me to talk about, please leave those in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will see you next week.